Welcome back to Switch to Linux. This is the Distro Wars, and we are going to be pitting Fedora against Manjaro. Somebody wanted to see Arch versus Fedora, and I thought about this. How do I best make this work? And I think that grabbing a very good, easy Arch system to pin up against a Fedora system of equal experience would probably be the best way to go. Now, the downside that I found is that the default for Manjaro is XFCE. The default for Fedora is GNOME. And so while both of the distros do have a spin with multiple different desktops, there's enough overlap. So what I decided to do is, since I've already looked at Manjaro with XFCE on a DistroWars, and I did look at Fedora with GNOME, I said, you know what, let's just go ahead and test out the Manjaro with GNOME pitted against the stock Fedora with GNOME. So, of course, let's jump on over to their websites first. On Fedora, getfedora.org, you can grab the workstation or the server. You have just your basic single download will get you your installation for your GNOME desktop. If you head on over to spins.fedoraproject.org, this is where you can find a variety of other builds. We have our Plasma, XFCE, LXQT, Mate, Cinnamon, LXDE, and SOAS. What's SOAS stand for again? I forget. That stands for something. I remember what it is. But anyway, so you can grab all those. Of course, over on Manjaro, you can head on to their main website, and there's choosing your edition, XFCE, there's Plasma, there's GNOME, Architect. I believe that they have. I believe that they actually have some more. Like these ones are more official. There's some more non-official ones as well in the community. You can go with your awesome Beast Bomb, Budgie, Cinnamon, i3, LXDE, LXQT, Mate, and OpenBox. So there are a lot of other ones. There is a 32-bit for XFCE 1804. There's an ARM. Ooh, look at this tech. If you didn't see this one, there's specifically for your Pinebook Pro. They have a Plasma and an XFCE. There's Raspberry Pis, Raspberry Pi 4, Rock Pi. So there's a lot of different builds. So both of these do have a lot of decent support. You're going to have, both of them are going to be easy to install, easy to set up. Now, the installation process itself, Fedora has more of an OEM install, meaning you basically get it installed and you set up your user and a lot of the other accessory things on the first boot of the system. Manjaro has a traditional Linux installer. I think it's the Calamaris installer. I could be wrong about that. But when you install it, it's pretty much a standard install. The one difference that Manjaro has now is you can choose no Office suite, LibreOffice, or I think it's SoftMaker Office. There's a third Office choice that you have in there. So you can choose one of those. That caused a little bit of controversy among the Manjaro community when they said, hey, we're getting rid of LibreOffice and going with this one, but it was a proprietary build, and that caused a little bit of a ruckus. And so, to their credit, the Manjaro community did listen to that feedback, and they gave us the option of LibreOffice, the other suite, or no Office suite at all. When I ran my installation with LibreOffice because Fedora also runs LibreOffice. So with that, we are going to go ahead and jump in, and let's go ahead and have a look at Fedora first, shall we? So we're going to go ahead and boot this guy up, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so here we are on the login screen for Fedora. These are in a virtual machine. They all will work full screen. They may not all boot that way necessarily. So when you come into Fedora, your default is going to be Wayland. You can also go back to Xorg. I have found on a virtual machine, Xorg is definitely the best way to run the system. So we're going to log in with that just to have the best performance in the virtual machine. Depending on your hardware, you can have Fedora or excuse me, Wayland or Xorg. Now, depending on which system you're using, like Fedora, if you want to run Wayland, I think Fedora is definitely one of the best distributions to do that. I do not know where Manjaro lies in the middle of all that. But here we are on Fedora, so we can see our nice little wallpaper here, our desktop. So before we dive too far in, let's go ahead and have a look at all of the versions and things that we have. So if we head on over to our details, you can see we're on Fedora 31. This is the current version. We are at GNOME 3.34.1. And is the Linux kernel here? I don't think the Linux kernel is listed here. No, it's not. All right, we can track down what the Linux kernel happens to be. So that's what we are working with. First, let's go ahead and have a look if there is a system monitor and see what type of RAM and resources are being used out of the box. So right now we're running on 1.3 gigs of RAM, which is pretty high. Especially for GNOME 3.34. It is snappy though, so the fact that it's running higher in system RAM is not super concerning to me. Let's see. So we are running 5.3.7-301 is our kernel version inside of Fedora. Now, one of the things that you get with Fedora is you do have, they use a very strict free and open source platform. So on default, you're going to get extremely only open source, which if that's your niche or demographic, you're going to like Fedora better. Now, in previous versions of Fedora, there were massive lists of like the 25 things you need to do to make Fedora functional after you install it. Fortunately, most of those are now gone, and that we do have a nice option here to enable the third-party repositories right on first boot of the Software Center. So that is actually something that we have. You can see that our updates, there's 29 updates available. If we have a look at our software repositories, we're going to have to give it a second here to update the cache and things. But what we'll be able to see is that there are some other repositories. So if you wanted to use Google Chrome, you want to come down here and enable this repository. There's a few other options here. So if you're running non-free NVIDIA driver support over here, you can enable that. We do have the RPM Fusion for Steam. You can enable that if you need Steam to run. We do have, by default, we have Fedora. There are some test updates. So if you wanted to use this and mess around with Fedora testing, you can go ahead and enable those repositories so you can test that system. Now, with Fedora, it does not have a rolling release model. Like Manjaro has a rolling model. You install Manjaro, and in theory, you never have to reinstall it. You just install the updates as they go by. With Fedora, you install the updates, but then every few months or whatever, when they release it, I think it's every 6 or 9 months or something, when they release a new version of Fedora, you generally have to wipe the system and restart. There are ways to update the system. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So I know several Fedora users I know, because it's so easy in Linux, just take a copy of your home folder, wipe the drive, reinstall the new version, drop your home folder back on. You really haven't lost much time. So with Fedora, though, you don't have the full rolling model, but is every few months when it does roll and release a new version, you are getting the absolute latest of everything. It's not like Debian where it rolls about as fast as a glacier. So having a look, probably our Firefox is probably going to be the most recent. Well, this one here, since this is last released, I think, in October, this probably is going to be a slightly older version of Firefox simply because I have not run system updates. If I run system updates, this is going to be the most recent version. I do want to have a look at LibreOffice. So we do have Libre Draw, Calc, and Press. It looks like we do not have databasing built in out of the box. We do have a lot of your built-in GNOME apps. So we have our Contacts app, or I thought I saw our calendar app. We have a calendar app somewhere. Oh, there it is. We have our calendar app. We have our boxes enabled here. There's our software repository, our weather. We have a variety of tools and utilities nicely tucked into this utilities folder, which is very nice. Out of the way. Let's go ahead and have a look at our LibreOffice. I want to check our versions and function of this. This, I suspect, should also be the latest version. Of course, it might still be on 6.2 just because of when this is. No, it's 6.3. Okay. So despite just not running updates for a while. So this is the version. If you do want to use the tabbed interface, you can come over here to user interface. Well, you should be able to. Am I having a bug? There it is. All right, so we can go ahead and do our tabbed interface over here if you do like that. No, I don't want to see the release notes. Thank you. So you can come over here and you can get your basic tab layout if you happen to like that viewpoint. So that's something that is new inside of here. Of course, you can come back over to your traditional layout here. And let's go ahead and check see if our spieling checker is functioning right. And it is indeed functioning correctly. We have our plugins working. And one of the things I really like about Fedora is the theming is nice and consistent. All throughout, it does look nice. Every application here, at least that it has installed by default, does look nice. I'm not sure what's going to happen if you install something like, Kden Live may not look quite as good. So with that though, let's go ahead and have a quick look at our settings again. We have our date, time, default applications. Is there no default? Is there no, it looks like we do not have any, default mail application on here. So they did not give us, they used to give us Evolution out of the box. It looks like they don't do that anymore, but they don't give us Thunderbird either. So we're stuck with no email application out of the box. So not sure if that means anything to you or not. We have a variety of Fedora themed wallpapers and a few other generic GNOME wallpapers as well. This is the newer version, so you can add a photo from your own personal library here as well. So that's a nice option. Of course, you can fine-grain, change your notifications, search functions, all the different things. All this is going to be very similar to what we'll see in Manjaro. The only question is which version of our GNOME are we actually using. So that is Fedora. Overall, looks pretty good. You have the Wayland and Xorg options. We have, very recent packages on everything. And it's not going to roll everything, but every 9 months or so, it's either 6 or 9 months, you're going to get a new version of Fedora. Everything's going to work well for you. And you can re-enable those third-party repositories, all those types of things. You might have to fight with media codecs and things like that on Fedora. That's something I didn't test inside the video, but that might be something you have to fight with. So anyway, let's go ahead and have a look at what Manjaro looks like. So we'll be right back onto that desktop next. And here we are on the login screen for Manjaro. You'll notice it's pretty much the same. So if we click in over here, let's check our gear. It looks like we have GNOME and GNOME Classic. So I don't know if this is Wayland or X. I have no idea. Let's just go ahead and log in. Maybe somebody in the comments will be able to tell me that. I don't follow Manjaro enough to know. My intuition says it's going to be X. Just because I know that Manjaro does function pretty well. This is actually the first time I've looked at the GNOME Manjaro, so this is the first thing we notice right out of the box. They do give us a very nice welcome screen. We have README, release information, forums, there's applications, link. So this is a very nice installer tool, nice and categorized if you want Brave, Chromium, Firefox is already installed, Midori, Opera. Hey, we do have Evolution installed by default. Oh, my hero. I love that. My favorite email client. We do have a few other options here as well. As far as your Office suites, I did install Libre Office. The other one, I think Only Office is the other one that you had the option to choose from. You can see we have 151 available updates to install. So we do get a nice pop-up here in the system without having to load up the package manager, by the way. Office applications, there's a variety of things here. So this here is a very nice, just a very simple installer tool for the most common software and applications. We'll have other options as well. Here is our add remove software, which this one should be POMIC. We can also run our system updates over here. Again, it's telling us we have 151 different updates to do. So we're not going to run these right now, but you can kind of see what every update happens to be. You could click on it for more details and information on this individual package. You can remove it, reinstall it, or apply the update. You can also go back over into our all, and we can come in here and look for any packages that we are looking for. And if we head on over to our preferences tab here, that pop-up was very reminiscent of Windows-like behavior, wasn't it? You can come over here and you can just have a look at the various options. So we have repositories. We can enable the Arch user repository, which we can turn on, turn off if we want to. We do have Snap. If you want to run Snap packages, you can go ahead and enable that over there. So that is actually a really nice feature and function of the system out of the box. Also, let's just comment on the theming. I think the theming here is a little bit nicer. We do have this Ubuntu type theming to it, where we just, in fact, it pretty much is kind of looking like an Ubuntu build, basically. So this is what we get. I do think the theming on this is a lot better overall. Now let's go ahead and dive in and just have a look at a couple of the early things that we did on Fedora as well. So we are running GNOME version 3.34.2. I can't remember what the last one was. Was that 1 or 2? So I think this is the same GNOME version. Let's go ahead and boot this guy up. Let's have a look at our kernel. We're running 5.4, so a newer kernel if you are looking for that. Looks like HTOP is not installed by default. Let's see if there is some type of system monitor installed. Okay, we have the same system monitor installed. We're using 1.1 gig of RAM this time, so about the same RAM usage as we had on Fedora. Also out of the deep box, just looking at what's in our panel up here, we have Caffeine is actually installed and already on the panel, so we can enable Caffeine. This is really good. So if you're unaware of Caffeine, this is an application that will suspend your lock screen. So if you're watching YouTube videos and you're having a problem with the videos, not triggering the system to not go into sleep mode, you can enable Caffeine for the period of time and then just disable it. You can tell very quickly there's little steam coming out of your cup of coffee, so that means that it's on. So in this mode, this screensaver will never kick on. If we go ahead and turn it off, now your screensaver will kick off. We also have a notification of how many updates the system is looking for. Here we have our Firefox. Let's have a look at the other applications installed here. So under our accessories, there are a lot more applications, as you can see. Let me pull up this menu here as more like what we saw over in Fedora. So you can see out of the box, there are a lot more applications installed. So if you consider this bloat, you will probably hate this. If you do not consider this bloat, you will probably love this. So we don't have our nice tool. Now, in fairness, a lot of these types of things are all in that one condensed folder on Fedora. So while it looks massive, it's not as massive. It is massive. It's just not as massive. We do have a lot of the same basic GNOME applications installed out of the box. We do have Steam installed out of the box, apparently. So let's go ahead and load up Steam, see what that looks like. And let's see if there's anything else over here we want to look at specifically. Nothing else, really. It's going to be pretty much the same. Now, of course, your difference is how you're managing your packages. Fedora uses DNF, and Manjaro uses Pacman with Pumuk as a GUI build for it. We clicked that Steam, and it's not seeming to load Steam. Not sure what's up with that. Oh, there it goes. Now Steam's loading. And I'm going to try this when maybe I'll try it after we record the live part of the video. I'm going to test and see if the Steam game I've been trying to works on Manjaro. It's something I've wanted to try for a while since we already have it. We have time shift, so you can do a good backup for your applications. Various system tools. Let's also go ahead and have a look at our LibreOffice. We do have the complete LibreOffice suite, so there's more LibreOffice applications installed on this system than we had on the other system as well. And so both of these are going to be pretty good. The Steam's going to sit there and annoy me now that we booted it up, right? All right. So let's get LibreOffice started. And mind you, 2 applications are running, and Steam is always this crazy, annoying application to run. So, all right, there we are. So about LibreOffice, we are running 6.2. So we actually do have an older version of LibreOffice, but again, in fairness, this version of Manjaro is a little bit older, and so I've not run system updates. My guess is if we run those system updates, LibreOffice is going to update to the absolute latest. Just an FYI. So out of the box on this install, because the ISOs have not refreshed for quite a while, this one is a little bit older for now, but when we run those updates, that's probably going to go away. So that is Manjaro in a nutshell. Which one is better? Which one is worse? Well, if you want a more user-friendly, out-of-the-box experience, just perfect working, functioning out of the box, Manjaro is definitely the way you're going to go. There have been some reports about Manjaro breaking itself after a period of time because Arch every now and again does that. Usually the fixes are pretty well known and pretty well documented, so you should be able to fix it with just minimal computer competency. Definitely you can ask around in, either in my Discord server on the troubleshooting section or in Manjaro forums. You could go over there and, get the help that you might need on that. Fedora is going to be, it's a little bit different beast. If you're more of you don't want anything installed on your system out of the box and you want to go with only free and open source software, then Fedora is going to be your thing. You're going to have a little bit more granular control over there versus Manjaro. So those are kind of things. Which one wins? Well, that's kind of up to you. Each one has its own different purposes. I like the theming and the overall user friendliness in Manjaro quite a bit better. I have run both Manjaro and Fedora in production for periods of time. I've always liked Manjaro a little bit better. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about either of these distributions in the comments down below.